Welcome to Hope's Homemade Kitchen. Today we're making 5 Irish recipes for your St. Patrick's Day celebration. First, we're making Irish beef stew with Guinness beer. Next, we'll make homemade Irish soda bread. Grilled Reuben sandwiches are also on the menu. Stick around for homemade Irish cream. And finally, Guinness chocolate cake with chocolate ganache icing. I'll provide the recipes in the description box below, along with timestamps for each recipe. Here are the ingredients I'm using today for the Irish beef stew. I'll also link the recipe in the description box below. I'm using chuck roast, bacon, Yukon gold potatoes, mushrooms, salt and pepper, flour, minced garlic, canola oil, tomato paste, beef broth, Guinness stout beer. If you don't want to use the Guinness stout, you can always just increase the amount of beef broth. A couple of leeks, a couple of ribs of celery, carrots, parsley, rosemary, thyme, 2 bay leaves, and to finish it off, we'll have frozen green peas, and for thickening, if we need it, cornstarch. So I've already chopped up my celery. You can do it as small or as big a dice as you want, depending on how much you really like these vegetables. So a leek is a lot like an onion. This particular recipe called for leeks instead of onions, so that's what I'm using. Now for this recipe, you want to use mostly the white parts and a little bit of the green. It's okay to have green since this is a St. Patrick's Day video. So I'm going to finish the vegetable prep here. Once the bacon and the meat are browned, we're going to throw these vegetables in and saute them. So I'm going to get these ready before we do our meat. Well, next I'm just going to roughly chop, actually just into quarters, the mushrooms, and I'm only using about half the mushrooms that the recipe actually calls for. And to wash these, I just ran them under water and dabbed them with a paper towel just to make sure that there were no dirt blotches in there with them. I know they recommend you don't put them in water, but I figure if it's all going in the same pot anyway, it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so now all of this is ready to go once we get our meat and bacon cooked in the pot. Those will go in next. Okay, now I'm going to prep my bacon. And these are 8 slices of bacon. Just going to cut them in pieces so I can throw them in the pot, and that'll give it a good base flavor and also give it a little extra fat to cook your vegetables in. Okay, next I'm going to do my chuck roast beef. Now this comes from a full, little over 3-pound chuck roast, but I see some fat in there that I probably won't be using. The recipe calls for 3 pounds of stew meat. So this beef will be just perfect. See in the middle there's some fat that I'm going to get rid of. But basically, just cutting it into chunks. The marbling in the meat and the fat will actually give it some really good flavor. But if there's some extra fat in there and you don't want it, just throw it aside. You can, of course, buy the meat that's already diced up for you, just stew meat, and that's usually just cut up chuck roast. Some good meaty pieces in there. I think the traditional recipe calls for lamb. Lamb is not used that often in the USA, so probably because it's more expensive, just not something that we eat regularly. It's more of a special occasion protein. But you can use lamb if you have it. First, we'll take it over the stove and get the bacon cooking first. We'll follow up with the meat that's been coated in salt and pepper and flour. Okay, next we're going to cook the bacon in the stock pot. I put it on medium to medium-high heat. And we'll throw the bacon in there and let it start cooking. All right, we're continuing to cook these pieces of bacon. So they're nice and brown. It'll take a few minutes and we'll be back. So while the bacon is cooking, I want to, in a small shallow dish, combine the 1/3 cup of flour, a teaspoon of salt and pepper. Make sure that is nice and mixed up. And then we're going to coat or cut up chuck roast just lightly. And once the bacon is out of the pan, nice and crisp and out of the pan, we'll put this in to cook and brown in that bacon fat. Ooh, it's kind of popping. That's what you want though, it's crisping up. And when we put them into brown, we're going to leave them until they develop a nice brown crust on them before we turn them. We'll let that brown for a few minutes and we'll be back. Okay, so the beef is starting to get brown. Oh, some nice color on that. And this is what really gives it a lot of flavor, so it always helps the flavor to brown your meat in stews. Okay, I think the brownness is evident. So we'll take that out and add some more. You want the heat to be around medium, just cracking but not smoking where it'll burn quickly. Okay, so it looks like about 3 batches I'll have here of the meat, which makes sense. It's about 3 pounds of meat, so that's about right. So while the beef is cooking, I'm going to prep my herbs. I have rosemary. I have fresh rosemary, thyme, and parsley. About a tablespoon each rather than a teaspoon if I were using dry herbs. Okay, I'm taking out the final batch. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. Next, we're going to put the vegetables in so it can cook in all of that flavor. The recipe does call for a little extra oil, so I'll put that in. And then I'll throw in my vegetables. That's all the leeks, celery, carrots, and mushrooms. Okay, those vegetables have cooked down quite a bit. And look at that. Those tasty bits on the bottom are coming right up, and that provides so much flavor to your stew. Now those are pretty soft, so next we're going to add the garlic and cook it a little bit, and then add the rest of the ingredients. So that's a little more than a tablespoon of minced garlic. Recipe calls for about a couple tablespoons of tomato paste. And I'm going to do that right there. Gives it a nice bright flavor. Then I'll add the herbs that we prepared. Put in the beef broth. About 4 cups of beef broth that I made with that Better Than Bouillon beef flavor. Oh, look at that nice color already. Wow. And then one of the most important parts for the Irish stew is Guinness. It calls for 8 ounces of Guinness. This is an 11 ounce, so I don't think it'll, you can either drink the other 3 ounces or throw it in. I threw it in. It's not gonna hurt it. You'll also want to add 2 bay leaves. Those are dry bay leaves. You can do fresh or dry. You'll want to pull them out at the end, and we'll do that. And then you'll add all of the beef back in. That's all the beef and bacon together. Now your potatoes will come later after this is the beef has cooked down, so we'll add potatoes kind of at the end until they're done, and then top it off with the frozen peas, and that's just so those don't get too done while we're cooking. Okay, I'm going to bring this to a boil, put the lid on, and let it cook for a few hours. Okay, now our stew is cooking. It'll take it about 2 hours, but now I want to prepare the potatoes that will go in. I have 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes. I really like these Yukon Gold potatoes because they're very creamy and they go great in this stew. Okay, now the Irish stew has been cooking for 2 hours and it's time to take a look and then add the potatoes. We'll be back in an hour. Okay, now we're at the last step on the Irish beef stew. The potatoes are done, and now we're just going to add some frozen peas in, mainly for color, but they taste good too. And let's let it cook for a little bit. Oh my goodness, that looks delicious. Okay, this stew is done and ready to serve. You will want to find the bay leaves and remove those, and then dish it up. That looks amazing. Okay, now the Irish stew and Irish soda bread is ready to be eaten, and it looks amazing. Let me give it a try. All right, let's give this Irish beef stew a taste test. Full of flavor, depth of flavor. It's excellent. I hope you try it. Here are the ingredients we need today for our Irish soda bread. Flour, sugar, buttermilk, baking soda, baking powder, salt, raisins, 1 egg, and 1/4 cup of butter. I'll preheat my oven to 375 degrees. So for the Irish soda bread, we've got 4 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon each of baking powder, baking soda, and salt. We also have 1/4 cup of sugar in there. So we'll give that a stir. And next we want to add our butter. So I've cut that into smaller pieces. Now I'll use my pastry blender to mix that butter in until it resembles like a coarse texture, coarse meal. Next, I want to blend my egg and my buttermilk. I have 1 1/3 cups of buttermilk and 1 egg in this cup to blend. Okay, that's nicely mixed. Next, I'll add it in and stir it until it looks like a shaggy dough. While I'm mixing it in, I'll add in my raisins. Next, I'm going to put some flour on my cutting board. A generous amount of flour so it doesn't stick. Then I'll just get in there with my hands. Get as much out as I can here. Next, I just want to work it into a circle that's about 7 inches in diameter. Maybe lightly kneading it so it sticks together a little better. Okay, so that's coming together into a nice little round. Okay, next I'm going to lift it onto the prepared pan that has parchment paper, and I've sprayed it with a little bit of Pam cooking spray. Next, I'm going to brush it with a little bit of buttermilk on top. Next, I'm going to cut a cross in it, about 1/4 to 1/2 inch down. This helps it cook in the middle, get down there and cook in the middle. And I've heard there's an Irish legend that says you need to let the angels out, and you have to poke a little hole in each of the sections. Okay, next we're going to take it to the oven where it will cook for 1 hour in a 375-degree oven. So this is the way it looks before it goes into the oven. And now we'll put it in the oven at 375 degrees for an hour. All right, so the Irish soda bread is out of the oven and looking tasty. We'll let it cool a little bit and then we'll slice it up with some butter. Okay, the Irish soda bread is out of the oven and ready to be cut. It's looking delicious. Let's cut into this and see if it's any good. Oh, looks beautiful. It's really good. It's like a big biscuit with a little sweetness in there. You could have it for breakfast. It would be a really good breakfast with coffee or, oh yeah, it's amazing. Next up on the St. Patrick's Day menu, we're making Reuben sandwiches. You can make it with 5 ingredients. We have pumpernickel bread, corned beef from the deli, Havarti cheese from the deli, sauerkraut that's been heated up, and Thousand Island dressing. For the Reuben sandwiches, it's a very simple assembly. What you want to do is take 2 slices of pumpernickel bread, spread it with a little bit of either Russian or Thousand Island dressing, each side. I've heated up some sauerkraut. First you want to do cheese. So a generous amount of cheese. And then some sauerkraut that's been heated up. And then layer it with some good corned beef from the deli, or if you have some homemade corned beef for St. Patty's Day, slice it thin and use that. I'm going to pile it kind of high. So it's assembled, and we're going to cook it in the panini maker today. So over here, I've got the panini maker. That's hot. It's heated to about 375 degrees. I'm going to lightly spray it with olive oil and then drop it right in. You can hear it sizzling already. I dropped the Reuben sandwich into the panini maker. It should be done in just a few minutes. While that one's cooking up, I'm going to assemble another one. So again, I'm going to put my dressing on the bread. Put a piece of cheese on each side over the dressing. I use either Havarti cheese or Swiss cheese. Add a little bit of that sauerkraut that's been heated. And then pile that sliced corned beef right on top. This one will be ready to go once the first one is out of the panini maker. So the second Reuben sandwich on the panini maker is looking terrific. Looks like it's about done. I'm going to take it off and slice it up and give it a try. Okay, the layers in there are looking really good. All right, let's give this Reuben a try. Delicious. Next, for St. Patrick's Day, we're making homemade Irish cream. The ingredients you'll need is 1 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. I'm going to pour it right in the blender. One and 2/3 cup of Irish whiskey. One cup of heavy cream. Two tablespoons of chocolate syrup. This is going to be delicious and can also be used to make a very popular frozen drink. If you've ever been to Vegas, there's a bar there called O'Shea's, and they make a frozen Bailey's drink, and it's amazing. And you can use this as a base for that drink. So for this, we'll use 1 teaspoon instant coffee granules, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1 teaspoon of almond extract. So those are our ingredients. I'm just going to do a quick blend, and it'll be ready to pour over ice and enjoy. It's as easy as that. Nice and thick. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Oh wow. You have to try this recipe. The ingredients you'll need for the chocolate Guinness Bundt cake are sugar, flour, sour cream, butter, Guinness stout beer, unsweetened cocoa powder, 2 eggs, baking soda, salt, vanilla, 8 ounces of dark chocolate, heavy whipping cream, and Irish cream. You'll also need a Bundt pan for this recipe. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Spray your Bundt pan with cooking spray or generously grease it with butter or shortening. Next, we're going to take the butter, 17 tablespoons of butter. That seems like a lot. It's 2 sticks plus 1 tablespoon. And we're going to mix that with 8 ounces of stout beer, So now we'll take it to the stove to melt the butter and the stout together. So here at the stove, we will turn it on a medium. So just the beer and the butter, and we'll get that to melting and just stir it occasionally. So while the beer and the butter are heating on the stove, we're going to whisk together 3/4 cup of cocoa and 2 cups of sugar into a small bowl. Next, in a larger bowl, I've mixed together 2 cups of flour and 2½ teaspoons of baking soda. Now we're back at the stove, and the beer and butter have melted, so I've turned the heat off. And next what we'll do is add our sugar and Hershey's cocoa mixture. It smells really good. I'm just stirring it till I get most of the lumps out. I think I'm going to get a whisk. Yeah, a whisk will work better with this. Okay, that's nice and smooth. I'm going to set that there for a while until I finish the other ingredients. Now that the chocolate mixture is on the stove and mixed up, we're going to mix together the eggs, sour cream, and vanilla. Two eggs, 2/3 cup of sour cream, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla. We'll whisk this mixture up and then add it to the chocolate mixture. So I have the chocolate mixture. I'm going to slowly mix that in. Okay, so now we have most everything in here. Next, what we're going to do is actually add in the flour mixture into the warm chocolate mixture. Again, this is the flour and baking soda mixture. So now I'm going to get in there with a spoon and really mix it well. Next, I'm going to pour it into our prepared Bundt pan that's been sprayed with cooking spray. Looking delicious. Next, I'll put this into a 350-degree oven for 45 to 55 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. Next, we're going to make the ganache for the cake. We need 1 cup of heavy cream. Put that in a saucepan. We need 8 ounces of dark chocolate. I have several chocolate bars here. I'm just gonna chop up roughly. I didn't have quite 8 ounces, so I just made up the difference with some semi-sweet chocolate chips to make a total of 8 ounces. Okay, it's starting to come together and all the chocolate is pretty much melted. Looking good. Nice and smooth. That'll about do it. I'll turn the heat off. And then we'll add in the other add-ins. Next, to finish off the ganache, I'm adding in 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and we're also adding in a tablespoon of Irish cream. Oh, this smells amazing. Okay, the cake has been out of the oven for about 10 minutes. Cross your fingers. Let's turn this out onto a cooling rack. Uh-oh. Oh no. Well, it's stuck, but I think we can work with it. I wonder if I had floured it, if it would have turned out a little better. It's kind of a mess, but I think it's going to taste really good still. I hope yours turned out better. If you have a few homemade Bailey's Irish cream, it probably won't matter anyway. All right, we'll just cover it up with icing. It smells amazing though. Okay, now we have our Guinness chocolate cake out of the oven, cooled and ready to frost. And you can see it didn't come out of the pan exactly beautifully, but we've done our best to fix it. And icing will cover up a lot of sins. So I'm just going to take that ganache, slowly put it over all of those blemishes, and no one will ever know. It is looking amazing. Well, that turned out beautifully, if I do say so myself. Picture perfect. So here I'm taste testing our Guinness cake for St. Patrick's Day. Have a little coffee with me. You could also make yourself some Irish coffee. Let's give this a try. Very moist and rich. The beer and the Irish cream give it a depth of flavor. It's not overpowering at all, but the dark chocolate gives it such richness. You definitely should try this for your St. Patrick's Day dessert. Cheers.